Imagine living your entire life believing ideas that were never completely true. Ideas repeated by society, schools, media, culture, even families. Not because people wanted to deceive you, but because humans naturally inherit beliefs before questioning them. Every generation creates assumptions that feel unquestionable. Some becomes the traditions, some become motivational slogans, some become social rules, and some become invisible mental prisons. Tonight, we are going to challenge 10 of the most common beliefs that millions of people accept without hesitation, not to spread negativity, not to attack the society, but to replace illusion with the awareness. Because awareness creates freedom, and freedom changes the way people think, lead, work, love, and live. Some of these truths may feel uncomfortable. Some may challenge your identity. Some may completely transform the way you see success, intelligence, fear, money, productivity, and truth itself. This is not just a video, this is a psychological journey into the hidden assumptions controlling modern life. So, before we begin, ask yourself one question. What if the ideas shaping your decisions were incomplete? And what if changing one belief could completely change your future? Human beings are storytelling creatures. Long before science, technology, and modern education existed, survival depended on shared beliefs. Groups survived because they trusted common narratives. Beliefs created unity, beliefs created identity, and beliefs created civilization. But there is a dangerous side to this psychological system. When a belief is repeated enough times, people stop questioning it. Even intelligent people can inherit false assumptions simply because everyone around them accepts them. Think about the childhood. Most people never choose their first beliefs, they absorb them from parents, from schools, from religion, from culture, from social media, from motivational speakers, from celebrities, and from trends. And eventually, repetition starts feeling like truth. This becomes even more dangerous in the digital age. Today, ideas spread faster than the critical thinking. Algorithms reward emotion. Controversy creates engagement. Fear creates clicks. And social validation creates the illusion of accuracy. A million likes do not automatically create truth. A viral opinion is not automatically the wisdom, and confidence is not an evidence. This video is not about insulting the humanity, it is about understanding the humanity. Because the moment people become aware of their hidden assumptions, they become more conscious leaders, thinkers, creators, and citizens. The goal is not cynicism, the goal is clarity. The human brain is not designed primarily to discover the truth. It is designed primarily to ensure survival. And throughout history, survival often depended on belonging to a group. Questioning the tribe could lead to rejection. Rejection could lead to danger. So humans evolved psychological mechanisms that prioritize social agreement. This is why repetition becomes so powerful. When people hear something repeatedly, the brain interprets familiarity as credibility. Even false information begins to feel trustworthy after enough exposure. This psychological phenomenon affects politics, marketing, social media, leadership, relationships, and even personal identity. Emotions also overpower logic more often than people realize. A person may reject evidence if it threatens their worldview because humans protect identity emotionally before evaluating facts rationally. This explains why debates online rarely change minds. People are not only defending the ideas, they are defending identity. Another major psychological factor is the social validation. When many people believe something, individuals assume it must be correct. This is known as herd psychology. But history repeatedly proves that large groups can be wrong. Entire societies once believed the earth was the center of the universe. Entire economies believed unsustainable systems would never collapse. Entire cultures accepted harmful stereotypes as unquestionable truths. The lesson is powerful. Popularity and truth are not the same thing. Real wisdom begins when people develop the courage to question assumptions without becoming hateful or arrogant. False ideas spread quickly because the human brain prefers simplicity. Complex truths require efforts. Simple emotional narratives spread instantly. Fear spreads faster than facts because fear activates survival instincts. The brain reacts emotionally before analyzing logically. This is why panic spreads rapidly during crisis. This is why outrage dominates online conversations. This is why controversial headlines attract millions of clicks. Modern media systems amplify this problem. Algorithms reward emotional intensity. The more shocking the content, the more engagement it receives, the more visibility it gains. As a result, people are constantly exposed to emotional stimulation, and emotional stimulation often reduces the critical thinking. Another reason wrong ideas spread fast is cognitive laziness. The brain naturally conserves energy. Instead of deeply analyzing every issue, humans create shortcuts. These shortcuts help people make quick decisions, but they also create stereotypes, oversimplifications, and misinformation. This is why slogans become more powerful than nuanced explanations, why emotional certainty often defeats thoughtful complexity, and why people sometimes choose comforting lies over uncomfortable truths. But awareness changes everything. The moment people understand these psychological mechanisms, they become harder to manipulate. And that awareness is where true intellectual freedom begins. One of the most popular beliefs in modern society is this: once I become successful, I will finally be happy. People spend years chasing money, status, titles, recognition, followers, awards, and validation. They imagine happiness waiting at the finish line, but millions discover something shocking after achieving the success. The finish line keeps moving. The promotion creates temporary excitement, then expectations increases. The expensive purchase creates temporary pleasure, then it becomes normal. The applause feels powerful, then silence feels unbearable. This psychological cycle is called hedonic adaptation. Humans quickly adapt to achievements. What once felt extraordinary eventually feels ordinary. This doesn't mean success is bad. Success can improve opportunities, security, influence, and the impact. But success alone can't permanently solve emotional emptiness. Research repeatedly shows that long term fulfillment is deeply connected to meaning, relationships, gratitude, health, contribution, and emotional connection. Some of the most financially successful people in the world still experiences anxiety, loneliness, depression, and emotional exhaustion because external achievement cannot fully replace internal peace. Society often teaches people how to achieve, but rarely teaches people how to feel fulfilled. And that differences changes the life. This topic becomes controversial because modern culture glorifies visible achievement. Social media intensifies this illusion. People constantly compare their life to curated highlights. Luxury becomes associated with the happiness. Visibility becomes associated with the work. But behind many public success stories are hidden emotional struggles, burnout, isolation, pressure, fear of irrelevance, fear of losing status, and fear of failure after the success. Some viewers may argue that money still matters, and they are correct. Money absolutely improves quality of life when basic needs are not met. Financial stability reduces stress. Opportunity matters. Economic hardship is real. The problem begins when society treats money as the final solution to human fulfillment because emotional health, purpose, relationships, and inner peace cannot simply be purchased. Another controversy involves ambition. Some people fear that discussing fulfillment may discourage achievement, but the goal is not to reject ambition. The goal is balance. Healthy ambition creates growth, unhealthy obsession creates emptiness. True success is not only measured by what people accumulate, it is also measured by who they become while achieving it. And perhaps the greatest tragedy is reaching the top of a mountain only to realize you sacrificed your peace climbing it. From childhood, many people hear the same message repeatedly: work hard and you will succeed. Hard work absolutely matters. Discipline matters. Persistence matters. But reality is more complex than motivational slogans. Billions of hardworking people remain invisible, not because they are lazy, but because success is influenced by multiple factors: timing, skills, strategy, communication, adaptability, networks, environment, opportunity, economic systems, and technology. Two people can work equally hard and experience completely different outcomes. This is one of the uncomfortable truths society often avoids discussing. Hard work without direction can become exhaustion. Effort without a strategy can become frustration. Imagine someone digging in the wrong place for years. Their effort may be enormous, but effort alone doesn't guarantee the results. Smart systems multiplies effort. Learning multiplies effort. Technology multiplies effort. Communication multiplies efforts. The modern world rewards visibility almost as much as ability, and many talented people remain unseen because they never learned how to communicate their values. This realization should not create hopelessness, it should create awareness because understanding reality helps people make better decisions. Today's world is more competitive than ever before. Technology connects billions of people into one giant global marketplace. This creates opportunity, but it also creates intense competition. Being skilled is no longer enough. People must also understand positioning, branding, storytelling, communication, digital presence, relationship building. A creator can produce amazing content, but without visibility, nobody sees it. A business can provide excellent service, but without communication, customers never thrive. A talented employee can work tirelessly, but without strategic networking, promotions may never come. This reality frustrates many people because they expect effort alone to be rewarded automatically. But systems do not always reward fairness perfectly. This is where adaptability becomes essential. The most successful people are often not the strongest, they are the most adaptable. Another controversial truth is that many people confuse motion with progress. Working constantly doesn't always mean moving effectively. Some people spend years repeating the same mistakes with greater intensity. Real growth requires reflection, not just repetition. And in the modern age, learning how attention works has become one of the most valuable skills on the earth. Humanity has more access to information than any generation in history. Within seconds, people can access millions of articles, videos, opinions, statistics, and tutorials. But something strange is happening. Despite having unlimited information, many people feel more confused than ever because information alone is not the intelligence. A person can memorize thousands of facts and still lack the wisdom. Another person can understand human behavior deeply with far less information. Real intelligence involves interpretation, pattern recognition, critical thinking, emotional awareness, decision making, adaptability, application. Internet created an illusion that consuming content equals the growth, but passive consumption is not the same as understanding. Many people today are overloaded mentally. Constant notifications fragment attention. The brain becomes overstimulated. Thought becomes shallow. Reflection disappears. Wisdom requires space, silence, observation, experience, deep thinking. Some of the wisest people in the history lived without smartphones, social media, or instant access to the knowledge. Because wisdom is not measured by how much information enters to the brain, it is measured by how clearly people understand the reality. And in a world addicted to speed, Deep thinking becomes a superpower. Modern technology transformed human attention into an economic resource. Every platform competes for this focus. Every notification fights for reaction. Every algorithm studies emotional behavior. This creates a dangerous psychological environment. People become addicted to stimulation, short videos, fast opinions, instant reactions, and constant novelty. As attention spans decrease, thoughtful analysis becomes harder. People react before understanding, judge before investigating, argue before listening. This affects leadership, education, relationships, and democracy itself. Because societies cannot think clearly when attention is permanently fragmented. Social media also creates emotional comparison. People constantly observe curated lifestyles. This creates insecurity, distraction, envy, and psychological exhaustion. Another hidden danger is intellectual superficiality. Many people now confuse exposure with mastery. Watching one video creates the illusion of expertise. Reading one article creates certainty. But genuine understanding requires patience, and patience has become rare. The digital era gave humanity incredible tools, but tools can either empower or control. The question is not whether technology is good or bad. The real question is whether humans still control their attention or whether attention now controls the humans. People often say humans hate change, but that statement is incomplete. Humans do not necessarily resist change. Humans resist uncertainty. People change constantly throughout the life. Children become adults. Technology transforms habits. Cultures evolve. Industries evolve. Relationships evolve. The real fear is unpredictability, the fear of losing identity, the fear of losing safety, the fear of losing stability. When people feel emotionally secure, they adapt surprisingly fast. But when leaders force change without trust, resistance increases dramatically. This is why communication becomes essential. People need clarity, meaning, direction, and transparency. In organizations, employees often resist change because they fear being replaced, ignored, or devalued. In relationships, people resist change because they fear emotional instability. In society, populations resist change when they feel unheard. Understanding this transforms leadership completely. Great leaders do not merely announce change, they guide people emotionally through uncertainty. And history repeatedly shows that societies capable of adapting intelligently survive crisis far better than societies trapped by rigid thinking. Every major transformation in the history requires leadership, not just technical leadership, emotional leadership. Because during uncertainty, people search for stability, they look for confidence, they look for honesty, they look for reassurance. Leaders fail when they ignore human psychology. A technically correct plan can still collapse if people emotionally reject it. This is why emotional trust matters. When people trust leadership, they tolerate discomfort more effectively. When trust disappears, even small problems create chaos. Great leaders communicate vision repeatedly. They explain not only what is changing, but why. They acknowledge fear instead of mocking it. They create participation instead of forced obedience. Another powerful leadership principle is the adaptability. The world changes constantly, markets evolve, technology evolves, culture evolves. Leaders who cling rigidly to outdated systems eventually become irrelevant, but leaders who adapt intelligently create long term resilience. And perhaps the greatest lesson is this: people rarely remember leaders who controlled them, they remember the leaders who helped them feel safe enough to grow. Society often treats failure as humiliation. Schools reward correct answers. Social media celebrates victories. People hide the mistakes. But failure is not always the opposite of success. Very often, failure is the path towards success. Every skill requires mistakes. Every invention contains failed experiments. Every breakthrough contains frustration. The problem is not the failure itself. The problem is interpretation. Some people experience failure and they conclude, I am worthless. Others experience failure and conclude, I learned something valuable. That difference changes destinies. Failure provides the feedback, it reveals weaknesses, it exposes blind spots, it builds resilience, it develops emotional strength. Many successful people failed repeatedly before becoming recognized, but society usually sees only the final chapter, not years of rejection behind it. Another hidden truth is that fear of failure destroys more dreams than the failure itself. People avoid risk, avoid creativity, avoid opportunities, and avoid the growth because they fear embarrassment. But mastery requires discomfort, and growth requires experimentation. The greatest achievements in history often emerged from individuals willing to fail publicly while learning privately. Behind every extraordinary achievement is usually an invisible story of setbacks. Inventors created thousands of unsuccessful prototypes before discovering breakthroughs. Entrepreneurs lost businesses before building successful companies. Artists faced rejection before becoming legendary. Scientists were criticized before being proven correct. But history edits struggle. Society remembers the victory, not the years of uncertainty. This creates unrealistic expectations for younger generations. People see success stories without seeing the emotional cost. They see confidence without seeing fear. They see wealth without seeing sacrifice. One major controversy is self-improvement culture is survivorship bias. People sometimes glorify success stories while ignoring millions who worked hard and still failed. This is important to acknowledge honestly because life is not always perfectly fair and pretending otherwise creates emotional confusion. But failure still contains value. Even unsuccessful experiences can develop wisdom, resilience, emotional maturity, and perspective. Another important lesson is this: failure becomes dangerous only when people stop learning. Temporary defeat is survivable. Permanent surrender is what truly destroys the potential. And sometimes the greatest transformation happens after people lose the identity they thought they needed. Many people imagine confident individuals as fearless, calm, certain, emotionally unshakable. But true confidence is not the absence of fear. True confidence is the ability to act despite fear. Every human being experiences fear: fear of rejection, failure, judgment, uncertainty, and the loss. Even highly successful leaders, athletes, creators, and performers experience anxiety. The difference is not emotional perfection, the difference is response. Confident people feel fear and continue moving forward. They understand that discomfort is often the part of growth. Social media creates unrealistic expectations by portraying confidence at constant certainty, but vulnerability and courage often exist together. Some of the strongest people in history openly admitted doubt because emotional honesty is not the weakness, it is maturity. Another dangerous myth is toxic confidence culture. Some people confuse arrogance with confidence, but arrogance often hides insecurity. Real confidence does not need constant validation. Real confidence stays calm, learns continuously, accepts mistakes, and remains emotionally grounded. Perhaps the greatest form of courage is continuing to move towards meaning even when fear whispers to stop. Fear exists for survival. Without fear, early humans would not have avoided the danger. Fear protected the life. The brain constantly scans for threats, and uncertainty often feels threatening because the brain prefers predictability, and predictability creates emotional safety. This explains why people remain in unhealthy situations, unhappy jobs, toxic relationships, limiting routines, because familiar pain sometimes feels safer than unfamiliar possibility. Growth requires stepping into uncertainty, and uncertainty activates discomfort. This is why transformation feels emotionally difficult. Neuroscience also shows that repeated exposure reduces fear over time. People become stronger by gradually facing discomfort. Public speaking becomes easier through practice. Leadership becomes easier through experience. Confidence grows through action. Another important lesson is emotional regulation. Fear itself is not the enemy. Uncontrolled fear is the problem. People who learn to observe emotions without being controlled by them develop tremendous psychological resilience. The modern world often encourages emotional suppression, but suppressed fear doesn't get disappeared. It simply controls behavior invisibly. Awareness transforms fear because once people understand why fear exists, they stop treating it like proof of weaknesses. For many years, society treated intelligence as something permanent. People were labeled smart or unintelligent early in the life. These labels shaped the confidence, opportunity, and the identity. But neuroscience reveals something extraordinary. The human brain changes continuously. This is called neuroplasticity. Learning physically rewires neural pathways, Practice strengthens mental patterns. Experience reshapes cognition. This means intelligence is far more flexible than many people realize. A growth mindset transforms performance. People who believe they can improve usually persist longer. They recover from setbacks more effectively. They embrace learning instead of avoiding difficulties. Meanwhile, fixed mindset thinking creates fear. People avoid challenges because failure threatens the identity. Another hidden problem is educational comparison. Traditional systems often reward specific types of intelligence while ignoring others. Creativity, emotional intelligence, leadership, communication, problem solving, and adaptability. Many brilliant individuals struggle in rigid academic systems, not because they lack intelligence, but because intelligence itself is multidimensional. The most dangerous belief someone can accept is this is simply who I am. I cannot improve. Because that belief silently limits human potential. Education and learning are not always the same thing. A person can pass exams yet struggle with real life decision making. Another person can lack formal credentials yet possess tremendous wisdom. Memorization has value, knowledge matters, but wisdom involves application, interpretation, experience, judgment, and self awareness. Modern education systems sometimes prioritize standardized performance over deep curiosity. Students learn to repeat answers rather than exploring the questions. Fear of mistakes replaces creativity. Real learning requires experimentation, curiosity, reflection, failure, and adaptability. Some of humanity's greatest innovators were not the traditional academic stars because innovation often requires questioning the assumptions. Another controversial issue is information dependency. Many people outsource thinking entirely. Search engines answer instantly. Artificial intelligence generates solutions. Algorithms recommend decisions. Technology is powerful, but human judgment still matters deeply. And a society that stops thinking critically becomes vulnerable to manipulation. The ultimate purpose of learning is not simply collecting information, it is developing the ability to understand reality clearly and act wisely within it. And wisdom becomes increasingly valuable in a world overflowing with the noise. Money changes the life. It creates opportunities, security, comfort, healthcare access, education access, freedom from many forms of stress. Ignoring the importance of financial stability would be unrealistic. But another illusion exists in modern culture, the belief that money alone creates fulfillment. Many wealthy individuals still experience loneliness, anxiety, addiction, emptiness, and emotional suffering because human needs extend beyond material comfort. Purpose matters, belonging matters, love matters, meaning matters, inner peace matters. Consumer culture constantly encourages the idea that happiness can be purchased. New products, new status symbols, new upgrades, new comparisons, but temporary excitement fades quickly, and endless comparison creates psychological exhaustion. Another hidden problem is identity attachment. Some people begin measuring self worth entirely through income or possessions. This creates fragile self esteem because external status constantly changes. Money is a tool, an incredibly powerful tool, but tools cannot replace emotional health. The goal should not be rejecting the wealth. The goal should be developing a healthy relationship with it. Because wealth without meaning often creates emptiness disguised as success. Modern economies depend heavily on the consumption. Advertising constantly influences the desire. People are encouraged to upgrade lifestyles continuously. This creates psychological comparison at massive scale. Social media intensifies it further. People compare behind the scenes, struggles to other people's highlight the reels. Consumer culture often links identity with possessions. Cars become status, clothing becomes identity, technology becomes self worth. Some people spend enormous energy trying to appear successful rather than becoming fulfilled. This topic becomes controversial because economic systems genuinely create aspiration. Aspiration can motivate the growth, but endless comparison can destroy the peace. Another issue is emotional consumption. Many people buy impulsively to escape stress, insecurity, boredom, or sadness. Temporary pleasure becomes emotional distraction, but emotional emptiness eventually returns. A powerful question emerges: how much of modern desire is authentic and how much is socially programmed? This doesn't mean people should reject ambition or enjoyment. The lesson is awareness. Because once people stop defining themselves entirely through external comparison, they often rediscover the gratitude. And gratitude is psychologically powerful. It shifts focus from scarcity towards appreciation, from endless chasing towards conscious living. Modern society glorifies busyness. People proudly announce exhaustion. Constant activity becomes a status symbol, but busyness and productivity are not the same thing. Some people spend entire days reacting emails, notifications, meeting, distractions, and urgent tasks. At the end of the day, they feel exhausted, but nothing meaningful actually move forward. True productivity requires focus, clarity, prioritization, energy management, and the deep work. Many highly effective individuals actually protect their time aggressively. They eliminate distractions, they simplify decisions, they focus intensely on high impact actions. Another hidden issue is emotional avoidance. Some people stay constantly busy because silence forces self reflection. Work becomes distraction. Modern hustle culture also creates unrealistic expectations. People compare themselves constantly. Sleep becomes undervalued. Rest becomes associated with laziness. But burnout reduces creativity, health, emotional stability, and long term performance. The human brain is not designed for non stop stimulation. Recovery matters, reflection matters, rest matters. And ironically, slowing down strategically often increases effectiveness dramatically. One of the most dangerous modern myths is the glorification of burnout. People celebrate working without sleep, ignoring health, sacrificing relationships, destroying the balance. Extreme hustle culture creates emotional exhaustion, and emotional exhaustion eventually damages the performance. This becomes especially dangerous for ambitious young people. They feel pressure to optimize every minute, to constantly achieve, to constantly produce. But human beings are not the machines. Creativity requires mental recovery. Clarity requires emotional stability. Long-term excellence requires sustainability. Another hidden problem is identity attachment. Some people only feel valuable when producing. Stillness creates guilt. Rest creates anxiety. This mindset becomes psychologically destructive over time. A healthier perspective understands the rhythm. Periods of intense effort should be balanced with recovery. Even elite athletes prioritize recovery because performance declines without it. The same principle applies mentally and emotionally. True productivity is not about doing more endlessly, it is about doing what matters the most consistently without destroying yourself in the process. And perhaps one of the greatest forms of intelligence is learning when to pause before life forces you to stop. People often assume truth naturally defeats falsehood quickly, but history tells a different story. Truth frequently loses temporarily. Emotion often defeats evidences. Popularity often defeats accuracy. Power often suppresses reality. Throughout history, many truthful individuals faced rejection before being understood. Scientists, thinkers, whistleblowers, reformers, and activists. Human psychology complicates truth. People resist information that threatens identity or the comfort. Large groups can collectively deny reality for long periods. Social media intensifies this problem because emotional narratives spread faster than nuanced truth. Outrage travels quickly, complexity travels slowly. Another controversial reality is that many people do not primarily seek the truth, they seek emotional confirmation. This creates polarization. People consume information, reinforcing existing beliefs. Dialogue disappears, understanding declines, but despite temporary setbacks, truth possesses unique power. Reality eventually produces consequences. False systems eventually weaken. Contradictions eventually emerge. The challenge is patience, courage, persistence. Because defending truth often requires emotional resilience when popularity moves in the opposite direction. The solution to false beliefs is not arrogance, it is awareness. Real intelligence begins with humility, the understanding that every human being has blind spots, every person can be wrong, every ideology can become distorted. Critical thinking requires emotional discipline, question assumptions, seek evidence, listen carefully, avoid instant conclusions. Another essential skill is intellectual flexibility. Strong people can update beliefs when new evidence appears. Weak ego resists the growth. This doesn't mean accepting every opinions equally. It means separating emotional reactions from rational evaluation. Learning from disagreement is powerful. People do not need hatred to disagree. Civilization progresses through thoughtful dialogue. Another important principle is media awareness. Modern information systems influence emotion constantly. Understanding incentives helps people think more independently. Gratitude also improves the thinking because fear and anger narrow perception. But gratitude creates emotional stability. The goal is not perfection, the goal is conscious awareness. And conscious awareness transforms not only individual lives but entire societies. Every generation inherits beliefs. Some empower humanity, some limit humanity. Progress begins when courageous individuals question assumptions thoughtfully, not with hatred, not with arrogance, but with curiosity. The world changes when people stop blindly accepting narratives, when they begin thinking deeply, when they become emotionally aware, when they choose wisdom over ego. This journey is not easy. Questioning illusions can feel uncomfortable. It can challenge the identity, relationships, confidence, certainty. But awareness creates freedom freedom from manipulation, from comparison, from fear based thinking. And perhaps the most important realization is this: human beings are constantly evolving. No person is permanently trapped by old beliefs. Growth remains possible, understanding remains possible, transformation remains possible. The purpose of this video was never to make people cynical. It was to encourage deeper awareness because awareness creates better leaders, better relationships, better decisions, better societies. And sometimes one new perspective can completely change the direction of a human life. If this video has challenged your perspective in even slightly, then the conversation was worth having. Which beliefs shocked you the most? Which idea do you think society misunderstands the most today? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments because meaningful conversations create collective growth. If you enjoyed this deep dive documentary video, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notifications for more content exploring psychology, leadership, society, human behavior, truth, growth, and modern life. And always remember, the strongest minds are not the ones that blindly believe everything. They are the ones brave enough to think deeply while remaining humble enough to keep learning. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.